whilst I'm here, I may as well just do this little bit that is coming under his halter here. So what I want to do, that is actually, that bit there is actually part of his head collar. I've just noticed that. So I'm going to leave that bit there. But what I want to do is I want to come under this area down here. So I'm going to bring a bit of the warm grey one down here. Let's just dab out a little bit of that pencil line. I'm going to use a bit of the cold grey at the back. And then come into the warm grey under here. It's not a very big area, it won't take long, but it just makes sense for me to do that. And then I want to go in with the burnt ochre 10%. A bit of the Naples yellow actually, it's a bit more yellow, so I'm going to use a bit of both. It wouldn't really matter if you only had one or the other, it really wouldn't matter, but I'm just going to use a bit of both. I'm going to go back to the burnt ochre there. One's just a bit more sandy coloured and one's a bit more yellow. So that's back to the Naples ochre. And what I want to do under here is come in with the French grey 10% and just blend into this yellow, either the burnt ochre or the Naples yellow. Naples ochre, sorry, that I've just put down. And just bring that almost straight down, almost. And like I say, there's a bit of the cold grey one at the back there. And then what I also want to do is put a little bit of the cobalt blue at the back there. Just a little bit along there. Got a bit of a shadow. I'm going to take a dark sepia pencil and I'm going to just draw this line in like that. That's the side of the halter there, the head collar. I'm just going to draw that in because that is quite a defined line underneath. And then I want to take the cold grey 4 and just bring a bit underneath that head collar, which is going to become the shadow around here as well. And even up into that cobalt blue. And I want to take a bit of the nugget. And with a backwards and forwards stroke, so just going one way and then the other, so that I get the flick of the pencil at the top and at the bottom. Backwards and forwards. And just run a little bit of this nugget through this yellow and through this grey. And bring that down. And it's really soft and subtle. It's quite a fluffy area. And I mean, it's not a great photograph. You know, there's not a huge amount of detail in this photograph. It was one of the better photographs that I could find for a reindeer. But there's not a huge amount, but that's okay because it's quite nice. You don't always need lots of detail. You can work around that. I'm going to come through here with a bit of the ultramarine. I'm going to bring a little bit of the ultramarine under this head collar. Bring that there. And then take a warm grey and just bring that through a little bit. And then I want to take the Payne's grey under here and every now and again bring down this little bit of shadow. And I can finish this off a little bit as I put the head collar in, but at least that area's in now. I'll take a tiny little bit of the burnt ochre actually from the Polychromos range and just put a little tint into this area. Put a tint of that and then blend it together with that Naples ochre and the coal grey at the back up here. There, so we've got that area in. It's, like I say, I'll probably blend it a little bit more as we put the head colour in. I'm just going over it with a bit of a bit of raw umber 10% just to blend that. I just felt that needed blending a little bit more there, but we can deal with that. This on the top, as I come to put this head collar in, I'll work on the how it blends into the top of this cheek, but I've just put that little bit of just put that little division along that head collar. And in fact, actually, now I'm here, I'm just going to take a sepia 50% from the Luminance range, and I'm just going to go along this line and add that little bit of shadow in. Okay, so that will do with that little area under there, that's fine. Coming down to this area under this head collar, I want to get a base layer of the warm grey one in. I know we've got some yellow around here, but this time I don't need it quite as bright. So, I mean, you could just go in with your burnt ochre 10% there. But I'm going to go in with the warm grey one underneath first, just to tone it down and to keep it a little bit more muted. I'm going to go all the way over here. I know that this area over here is going to be really dark, so I could go straight in with the darker colour if I wanted to over here. What I am going to do though is take a little bit of the ultramarine and run it down the edge of this nose, just down there. I can see that there's a lovely bit of blue down there, and then I'm going to just blend that with a little bit of the coal grey one. Let's blend that out. It's just a really nice little bit of blue down the side of that nose. And then I'm going to bring this warm grey I'm just going to bring it down to about here because I can see that there's definitely some change around here. I'm going to bring it down to the edge of this nostril, and then I can work on this area and then I can work on that separately. So I've got the base layer down and I'm going in with the burnt ochre 10% in this area. And you can see how it's the grey underneath. It's just sort of muted down this this burnt ochre. 10%, and that's what I wanted. I didn't want it to be really, really, really bright in this area. I'm just going to pop this around here. And then I'm going to go into the burnt ochre. So that was the brown ochre. I'm going to go in with the burnt ochre. So the burnt ochre has the more sort of pinky peachy tint to it. And I'm going to bring this around here. Just dab out that little pencil line on the bottom so that I can feather that out. So I'm just working up from light to dark, and I'm just looking to see what colours I can see as the highlights, what colours I can see. I can see around here that it's more pink underneath, and I can see in the middle it's more sort of yellowy colour there. So that's how I'm choosing my base layers. I've put my warm grey one down because I want it all quite sort of muted. I didn't have to put the warm grey one down. I could have just gone straight in with these colours. I just like to use the warm grey or the cold grey as a base layer, and I use it more often than not actually, and I just know where I am with it, sort of know what colour it's going to give me and how I'm going to get how it's going to affect the colours as I go up through the layers. Looking for my burnt ochre at 50%, and I'm going to, for a start, I am going to just draw a line under that. I know that I'll be going over that. I'm just going to draw a line under that, and then I'm going to start to come down. And what I want to do, this is going to be all really dark over here, but I want to start to bring this down this way. The reindeer, they have quite wide noses. Unlike a horse, it's quite a wide sort of flat nose. So normally with a horse, we'd be sort of coming down at this angle or sort of coming across at this angle. But the reindeer is actually going out much flatter. His nose is much wider and he's going out much flatter to create more of a flat shaped face. Just using little circular motions on this area, and then coming down, and by the time it sort of gets to the edge of this head collar here, you can see that it's gone from coming across. In fact, you can see the shape because you can see how the head collar is quite helpful actually, thinking about it, because the head collar shows you how wide that bit is there and how flat his nose is. And I'll just bring that bit of colour in there. I'm going to go in with the dark sepia in this area here to start with. Let me just draw that in under there so we don't lose that. Let's pop a little bit of shadow there and then start to come down so it does sort of filter up and into this area over here. I'm going to stay away from this little blue bit for the minute, and I'm going to tone that blue bit in afterwards. So I'm just coming down the edge of this little blue bit. really lightly. And then start to come down his nose. I'm just using little circular strokes because I can't see any directional strokes apart from the bits that start to come off. Then I'm just going to blend it to there for the minute, and then we'll blend that in afterwards. And I'm just roughly, well, not roughly, but I'm just very lightly plotting this this area in. I can see that it comes around his nose. I'll bring that around. And it sort of comes, in terms of how far this goes, it comes to the edge, pretty much the edge of this little triangular bit that we put in earlier. So we're in pretty much the right sort of place with it, actually. I'm just going to feather it a little bit. And then what I want to do, so I've plotted it in, and what I want to do is to take that Caput Mortem Violet again, and I want to stay away from the edges at the minute. I don't want to go to the feathered bits. Just want to deal with what's inside in the middle. And I want to add a little bit of this Caput Mortem Violet into this middle bit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over it with the Payne's Grey. And this is what this little bit on the edge, actually, I'm going to go over it with a bit of the ultramarine. And just feather that edge a little bit, still leaving some of that lighter blue underneath. But just feather that edge with the ultramarine. Bring that down. Give him a nice little feathered edge on the end there. Give him a fluffy side of his face. And then back in with this Payne's Grey, like I said. And this is, as we were doing before, we're going to create that sort of lovely, rich, very dark colour. But it's just going to have that little tint of aubergine to it. And when I'm in the middle again, let me just bring that round. It's quite dark under there. When I'm in the middle again, I can just go to this little circular motion. I don't want to see the circles, so that's important. I don't want to see these circles at the end. Never want to see the circles unless I'm sort of working on something like a dog's nose that's got that circular texture. Otherwise, I don't ever want to see the circles. I want this, these little circular strokes to be really even. And it is worth practicing that on a piece of paper. If you're struggling to get that even pressure, it is worth practicing that on a piece of paper before you put it down onto your final piece. Because once you've sort of got those circles in, If you've got quite uneven pressure and you can see these circles, it's quite hard to get them out really. You've got to keep pressing on harder and harder to get them gone. So it's worth having a bit of a practice. And this particular technique, gee, that's coming, I'm making his nose come too sort of round, aren't I? Let's tidy that up a little bit there. Yeah, this particular technique, so I was just saying that you don't want to do it with a really sharp point on your pencil. I don't know if you can see that, but I've got that sort of lovely, what I call a chisel tip. It's quite flat. It's a bit like almost like a bit of a fountain pen tip, isn't it? I call it a chisel tip because it looks like, I always think it looks like the felt tips that have chisel tips on the end of them. But it's just sort of a nice flat triangular bit on one side. And that gives a nice even pressure. If you did it with so if I'd just sharpened my pencil and I'd sharpened it really sharp, I probably wouldn't try this technique until I'd just sort of worked it onto a bit of scrap paper first to just take that really, really sharp point off. Get that chisel tip and then put it down onto my piece of paper. So I'm going to come back to this in a minute, but what I want to do is to darken this down up here. So I'm going in with the burnt ochre 50%. And just adding a bit more of this lovely rusty colour on the side here. Not pressing on hard. I don't need to press on hard. Remembering to shape it as we get to this stage, shape it down. So roughly as you come in line with this side of this halter, that's when it's going to start to shape down. That'll give you some idea. And I'm just going to go into this area with that Naples ochre and blend that bit. In the middle. And also, whilst we're blending, we might as well blend this bit down the bottom with the burnt ochre. Let's put that pinkiness in down the bottom. I want to come off this side with a cold grey 4 and just bring this. So between the eye and the nostril, you can see that you've got some change of direction. You've got a change of direction down here, and then it comes down and just finishes up to the left of that nostril. So I'm just going to pop that in. I know I haven't done this bit down here yet. I'll bring that in. I'm going to go in with the dark sepia as well and just darken this down a little bit more here. Just coming under, there's a bit of shadow that's just coming under that head collar. I want to come around here. I'm taking the sepia 50%. And this area that I just said was changing direction, I'm going to come down this little bit with that. And so it's coming down, so it's between the eye and the nostril. It starts to change and it just comes straight down. So it's sort of coming down towards the middle of this, this jaw under here. So I'm using landmarks to, you know, work out directions of features and, you know, changes of direction of fur and that sort of thing. This is coming over, so I'm using this sepia to bring this over. I don't want to completely cover this area in. I just want to start to shape it to come over. And then we've got this other change of, or sort of changes of curls round again here along this line here. So we're going to pop some of that in as well. I'm just using backwards and forwards stroke with this sepia. And it curls out a little bit, just starts to flick out a little bit on the bottom. So I'm still using this sepia, which is this lovely sort of brown grey. From the Luminance range. Really lightly and just popping that in there. I'm just bringing this over this nose gently. And I'm just using backwards and forward strokes here so that I can keep the wispy parts of the first stroke on either end of the pencil. So as I flick it up, I get the wispy bit on the top, the sort of flick, and then it comes down. And that way it just creates a more natural looking fur. Back in with this Payne's grey here and darken this area in the middle and feather it out a little bit. So I just want to feather it. And bring the dark sepia in as well. I want to make sure this grain's nicely filled in so that it really does look nice and dark. And bring this dark sepia. going to bring a little bit of the burnt sienna over here off the edge of this dark bit. So I'm just blending that out with the burnt sienna. I'm going to take the burnt ochre 10% and blend this out a little bit. So I'm not pressing on hard, I'm just blending these areas together. So just like before, we're bringing the layers together and helping to fill in this grain a little bit. I am going to go back to the burnt ochre down here because it's definitely got that more, it's definitely got more of a pink tint to it. And actually right under here, I'm going to go in with the French grey 10% because that's got a bit of grey under there. I've just said French grey 10% and it's raw umber, isn't it? I meant raw umber. Just a little bit. We'll blend that out as well. And one thing I shouldn't forget, I'm going to put that in there and I will tidy that up when we do the halter. I definitely don't want to forget that in there because that's the bit of fur right inside the ring of the head collar. So I'll just put that in there and then we'll deal with that. But I definitely wouldn't want to forget that. There we go, we've got that there, but I will have to sort of tidy that up as we get to it. So in with the Payne's grey over the top of this sepia area that we've put down, and I'm going to start to shape this area a little bit more. So that's the nostril there. And it starts to come over dark, so as the nose sort of changes shape, that's where this darker area starts to come over. It looks a bit funny here at the minute because we haven't got the nose in, but it's at the point that this nose changes shape. And I'm going to start to bring this over. And I'm just going to add a bit of dark and then I'm going to deal with it as I come down here and work with the nose. But I just want to sort of know where the dark bits stop and start really. just blend that out a little bit. And I want to go back and put a little bit of this burnt ochre, 50% into this area. And this area. And again, I'm just using the circular strokes because there's not a lot that I can actually put in here. I'm just looking to get the lights and the darks in, and that will shape the face. One colour that I do want to put in here is a little glaze of Venetian red. So I'm going to put a glaze of it there, and I can see here as well. I want to put a glaze of it here. It's just got that extra pink tone to it that I want. So I'm just putting a little glaze of it. And that's quite useful. Pop a bit here as well whilst I've got it now. So I'm back in with this sepia 50% from the Luminance range, and bring in a little bit into the bottom of this face. And then again, just adding another glaze of it over the top, over this side. I'll bring that down there. I also want to take the Payne's grey as well and just look at adding a little bit of detail into this area. So just looking for a couple of little marks that would be sort of deep down inside the fur. Only little marks, not much. Go in with the warm grey 6 and just add a little bit towards the top of that. It's almost like the fur's just ever so slightly curving out. So I'm going to add a little bit into that. And just shape that face up a little bit. And that's going to be a little shadow that's sitting under this head collar when we've done it, but I've just popped that in there. It's just a little shadow there. I want to blend this bit out here with a bit of the burnt sienna 10% from the Luminance range. And just bring that in. Just to carry on with that pinkiness. And then blend that bit in the middle with that Naples ochre. So I'm going to move on, and I've still got a bit of shaping to do on this face around here, but I'm going to move on to his muzzle. And once I've done this, once I've done this area here, then I'll be able to see exactly how far up I need to bring this bit that's coming over here. So I'm just going to move on to his muzzle now, and then I can go back. So I'm going in with the warm grey one and bringing this around here. Now, if I pick up a warm grey 5 and I just pop in this nostril, I know that's going to go much darker. That's actually going to go in with the dark sepia, but I'm popping it in with a warm grey 5. A bit of warm grey in there. And actually I'm also going to pop in a little bit of brown ochre 10% in there, because I can see some extra little flecks in there that I'm going to want to perhaps take out with the craft knife or the slice tool afterwards. So I have my base layer under there now, and now the craft knife or the slice tool will go into there quite nicely. And then I'm going to come down here, bring this down with a warm grey 1. And I'm sort of following the direction. So his fur's coming down over his lips. Obviously, it's coming down towards his lips. It's coming over his nose and down towards his lips. So I am following that direction. And then it's coming around. Take out that little line there. And it's coming down this side. And under here, we have got a bit of cold grey around here, so I'm going to go in with a bit of cold grey around there. A bit of the cold grey 1. And I'll just dab out that pencil line underneath as well. Bring that down. I want to use a little bit of olive brown 10% on the bottom of this nose. It's a little bit like raw umber, but it has slightly more sort of greeniness to it. And I find it's quite a useful colour. I do use it quite a lot actually. There's a little bit of the olive brown 10% there. And then I'm going to take under this line here. Put that little divider in. Again, I'm going to go in with the olive brown 10%. And also a little bit of the burnt ochre 10%. And just put a touch of colour in there. And I'm just taking a warm grey 5 to just shape the edge of this. The edge of this mouth round here. Keeping it nice and soft. I'm going to use a bit of that olive brown 10% on the bottom down here. And a little bit of the brown ochre. And if you only had one or the other, it really wouldn't matter. You don't necessarily need both of them. One or the other would be fine. So I'm going to come around here with the dark sepia, but keeping it very feathery, not really overdoing the area at all. I want to keep it really nice and feathery and soft. So I'm just bringing that in to this muzzle area. Shaping it around. The dark bit there, which is obviously the other nostril. And then I'm going to bring this dark sepia into this nostril. His nostril's really quite sort of soft and blurred and not much detail. Go into a bit of the grey here and take that both ways, and then it comes up there. And I'm just going to take out that, a Tombow eraser actually, and I'm just going to take that bit out because I've just put that bit in the wrong place. So let's pop that there. Let's just dab off those crumbs. Let's just go back in with a bit of a base layer to go back over that. And the dark bit, actually, I've just noticed it follows up the edge of this jaw here, and so it actually goes there. So it was just ever so slightly high. So I'm going to put it there instead, and that's better. And then this bit is quite soft and feathery. So let's bring that round. And it's definitely a case of less is more until you're sure here, because it's such a small area, it would be really easy to just completely obliterate this area with little marks, and before you know it, you've filled it all in and you've brought it all down too far. So I just want to take it slowly so that I can sort of do a couple of marks, check that I'm not coming down too far, or check that I'm not filling in areas that I shouldn't be filling in with the with the little strokes, the little fur strokes, and that way I can just keep control of it a little bit more. Bringing the fur round. I'm going to go into this bit here with a bit of, do the walnut brown actually first. Let's go in with a little bit of the walnut brown. And I'm just using little dashes and little dabs across there because that's such a small area. Again, it would be easy for me to fill that in and to make that far too big. So what I'm going to do is I've just sort of dashed it in, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a tiny little bit of the burnt ochre, 50%, to just put that rusty colour in. And then I'm going to blend that out with the brown ochre. And if I needed to do it again, then I'll do it again. So I can see that I do need to make it a bit darker. But I can build it up a little bit at a time. And in with that olive brown, 10%. And bring that round under here. And then I know that this bit can come down here. So this is the nostril. So I'm going to go in, actually I'm going in with walnut brown. I want to go in with dark sepia. It's the wrong pencil. So I want to go in with the dark sepia into this middle bit where it's really sort of dark in this nostril. Feather it out. Bring a couple of these darker bits around the side. And just shape the side of that muzzle and also down this side. So it sort of comes around there. Again, this is dark in here. I've got my warm grey one base layer in there, but I'm just checking. And then I'm going to come in with a Payne's grey first of all. I'm going to bring the Payne's grey round. And I want to leave bits and sort of hit and miss around here because there's obviously a little bit of texture. I think it might be a bit of snow on the edge of his face. So we'll just leave a little bit of texture there to represent that. I just want to bring that little dark bit along there. That's just shaping that face. And then on the top of this nostril, it sort of just fades out into nothing, just into the darker area. So I'm going to go into this darker area. Just shape that nostril a little bit more. It just comes over that way, just a little bit more. That's a bit better. Go in with the dark sepia as well and finish that off. And because it's got a little bit of texture, which I think is snow on the picture, I'm just going to use little dots around here, almost like little dots and dashes, to just bring in a bit of this darker area, but leaving a bit of this lighter paper. And I can always go in and add a little bit of that with the slice tool afterwards. I want to go into this area here with a bit of the Payne's grey. Take that off. And just use it to shape around this bottom lip, this bottom jaw, so you can see that it's just coming around this way. And that is just going to shape this bottom jaw. And I'm just going to put a darker bit in there. And then take the warm grey one and just add a little bit to shape that as well. Shape that around there. And I just want to put a tiny little bit of that burnt sienna 10% in there and there. And I'm going to use a little bit of the coal grey 4 to just break up this area in here. Just tiny. You may not need to break yours up. I've just left mine a little bit, a bit large there. So I just need to break that up inside there so that it looks like a little bit of snow. If that's what it is, I think it's a bit of snow, but say the photograph's not the best, so I think it is. And I'm just going to go in with a little bit of burnt ochre, 10%, to just blend that out and add that touch of yellow on the end. There we go. So he's got his muzzle, and we've got a few little whiskers to put in, but we'll put those in at the end. We'll put those in right at the end when we come to do the other sort of bits and pieces with the slice tool or the craft knife, if that's what you're using. So I want to bring that down a little bit. Okay, so that's pretty much his nose and his face done. Okay, so I think that's a good place to leave this part of the tutorial here. So we'll leave it there for now. Thanks very much for drawing along with me, and I look forward to seeing you in the next part of the tutorial. Thanks very much. Bye for now.